Okay, so our next screencast in the series on the Roman Republic is designed to review how Rome went from a small city on the Tiber River, a small town really on the Tiber River, to being to expanding its territory to becoming the Roman Republic in the early days of the Roman Republic. The large territory, basically what we now know as the Italian Peninsula. We'll look at Roman imperialism a little bit later when it expands to fill up the territory all around the edges of the Mediterranean and reaches really its greatest, not quite its greatest, but close to its greatest geographical limits. But for right now, we're interested in the early days of Rome and how it expanded to fill the Italian peninsula. One of the things we want to keep in mind is that Rome, even though this Roman expansion was occurring at the same time of the age of the Greek city-state, it was very much unlike Greece in that Rome sought to expand and unify through conquest. The Greek city-states never really unified. As we know, they sometimes came together against common foes, but they largely stayed a collection of distinct city-states, whereas the Roman Republic came to resemble a large unified political system. So that's a distinction between Greece and Rome. We also want to keep in mind that the Roman Republic becomes an inspiration for the U.S. government. We spent some time in class and will continue to spend time in class comparing the Roman Republic with the United States Republic. But it's important to note that the U.S. government took direct inspiration from the Roman Republic. The founders of the American government, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, George Washington, and people like that, were very familiar with Roman history and saw in the Romans an inspiration. One of the first things we want to do, though, is get sort of settled into a little bit of chronology about how Rome becomes the Roman Republic in the early days. From the age of 753 to 509 BCE, Rome was a monarchy. There were the Roman kings. There was actually 7 kings, and we're not going to be focusing on any one of the specific kings, but we do want to make note that the Roman kings gradually were pushed aside by the aristocratic nobility, the aristocratic families in the Roman Republic. The story of the rape of Lucretia, some of you read the story of the rape of Lucretia as part of your work with the Roman primary sources, tells the story of how one of the Roman kings raped Lucretia, and it was a senator's wife, and as punishment, the Senate overthrew the monarchy and established the Republic. What we do know for sure is that the kings of Rome created the Senate, which is a collection of representatives from aristocratic families somewhere in this time period of 753 to 509 BCE. The Roman Senate was created. I've written here 1,000 years, because the Roman Senate lasted for nearly 1,000 years. One of the things we want to keep in mind is that the Senate of Rome was not like the Senate of the United States. And the Senate in the United States are elected officials, purely democratically elected officials. The Senate in Rome was a democratic body in the sense that they participated in government, but they were not elected. They were part of basically an aristocratic class. The Senate was created by the king as an advisory group to the kings of Rome. You could say advisory group. You could also say that the Senate was created to placate the aristocratic families. The kings created the Senate in order to keep them happy. It's the beginnings. It really speaks to the beginnings of a power struggle in Rome, something that is part of Roman history all the way through the Roman Republic until the establishment of the Roman Empire under Caesar Augustus. That's to come later. In the early days of the Roman expansion, whenever Rome conquered territory, it would assimilate people into that territory, giving them citizenship, oftentimes including freed slaves. Now, the reason for that was that when you give people citizenship, you give them an equal stake and an equal investment. They become shareholders. So the success of Rome is their success. Rather than remaining antagonistic to their conquerors, they become allies of their conquerors, perhaps grudging allies, but certainly allies So the idea of assimilation and what we have called an inclusionary view of citizenship is really important to understand Roman expansion. By 550 BCE, Rome was about 30 to 40,000 people, and this map here shows by about 550 BC, this little red dot here was Rome. To the north were the Etruscans, who very significantly culturally influenced Rome. To the south were the people of Latium, it's where the Latin language comes from, and the Greeks in the south here. Remember, again, 550 BCE was the age of Athens and Sparta, and Greeks would have colonized these areas. Remember, just off the map here is the Peloponnese. This image here is an early image of Etruscan artwork, very similar to the Mediterranean art of the day, right? Very almost stylistic, shown in profile, echoes of Egyptian art, all mixed in. This is probably not surprising in its style and form. Back to the map, the Etruscans here in the north were the first to be absorbed into the Roman Empire. Over time, Rome used its geographic advantages on the Tiber River, its fertile farmland in order to feed its armies, and its easy access to the sea to expand and fill the entire Italian peninsula. During the days of the Roman Republic, before Imperial Rome, the Roman Empire really filled up the whole Roman peninsula, the whole Italian peninsula, the whole boot, as they say, shaped like a boot. Rome had some things to its advantage in addition to the geography that the Latin language allowed for easy administration of the conquered lands. One of the things that we also learn about in this period is that the Romans developed a kind of a love-hate relationship with the Greeks to the south. They loved the Greeks and admired the Greeks and found inspiration in art and literature and the theater and their religion. But they also felt that the Greeks were lacking in the manly virtues that the Romans really valued. And they lacked respect for Greece's military capabilities. They felt that they were weak militarily. But it's probably fair to say that they were somewhat jealous of the Greeks too at this time, because remember, in 550 BCE and all the way into the early 5th century BCE, Athens is really the jewel of the Mediterranean. As we said, to the north initially was a group of people called the Etruscans. The Etruscans, it's been found that the Etruscans, some of the people from the some genetic material in contemporary people of northern Italy can be somewhat linked to genetic material of the people of Asia Minor. Remember the story of the Aeneid and the founding of Rome by Aeneas, a soldier of Troy. Anyway, the Etruscans were to the north, very splendid society, very elegant, really in many ways a grander society than Rome in these days. The Etruscans influenced Roman culture. The idea of funeral banquets, games, sporting events, the jewelry, the arts, etc., very greatly influenced early Roman culture. So here's an example of Romans absorbing culture from the north. Again, on their way to becoming what we had said in class is a really truly multicultural society. The Romans adopted much of the Etruscan ceremonial practices, the process of using divination, sacrificing an animal and reading its entrails, looking at its intestines as a message from the gods, for example. They adopted practices of the army and the infantry, the alphabet. So the Romans, right from the very start of the history of Rome, were quite eager to absorb and assimilate the culture of those people they came into contact with and those people that they ended up actually conquering. And again, one of the themes we're looking at about Rome is it's a truly multicultural society. So that's a very quick summary of what we have been discussing in class about Roman expansion in the early days of Rome. And again, remember to refer to your text for reinforcements on this.